You dummy.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, good advice, Tangman. I like it. Yeah.
Good.
Now I feel like I'm equipped to go to the gym, lift heavy things,
So far.
and scream my fucking brains out.
From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. My name's Nick, that's Jim, and we are here to pump
You up!
And now broadcasting from the churn, that's us. It's time for some Pod Therapy.
Hans and Franz. We are here to pump you up. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Was that Norm Macdonald? Was he in on that?
It was Norm Macdonald and Dana Carvey.
Yeah.
Wow. There you go, man. Rest in peace, Norm
Norm
Macdonald.
Macdonald.
God, that deadpan humor. He
Yeah.
was good.
He was.
He was so funny. I saw this
Yeah.
bit. They were you've seen Seinfeld's comedians in cars getting coffee?
Yeah. No, that was Kevin Nealon. It was Kevin
was
Nealon.
Kevin Nealon.
Yeah,
You're
Norm would have
absolutely
been
right.
too
Yeah.
young. That bit was older than
Yeah.
whenever his day came.
Kevin Nealon's a great one.
Kevin
too.
Nealon was good. But yeah, Norm, he's with Seinfeld in the car show that he
Oh,
does
yeah.
on Netflix.
Yeah.
And he's talking about Cosby because, they're both these, famous comedians. And he's like, gosh, man, the Cosby thing was hard, wasn't it? And they're just having like a touching moment. Seinfeld's like, yeah, it was. And Norm says, yeah, I was talking to Patton Oswalt the other day, and he said, man, the worst thing about that was the hypocrisy. And Seinfeld goes, yeah, absolutely. And Norm goes, you think so, though? Seinfeld goes, yeah. And he goes, I kind of think it was the rape.
Yeah.
Just Seinfeld, like, almost crashes the car. He's in the middle of traffic. Just like, his head just jerks. He's like, oh, God. So, Norm Macdonald, rest in peace. You were a funny guy.
I have enjoyed all of the clips that people have been posting on social media.
Oh,
about
yeah.
some of their favorite
Little
Norm
bits.
Macdonald
Yeah,
bits. And
he crushed, man.
Oh,
He was
yeah.
so funny. For me, he will always be the guy in, oh God, was it Happy Gilmore? No, it's Billy Madison, where he's like the drunk friends of Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're just these like burnouts that don't do anything. And they're just always drunk by the pool, and they throw pickles at the window to like see if they race or whatever. He's that guy to me. And I know him in no other way. I'm sure he's many things, but rest in peace, man. So if you are with us in September, don't forget, go to votejim.net. Vote for me for Best of Las Vegas. Trying to get as many votes in on as many devices every day as I can, so I can hopefully boost myself in the rankings. We'll see if I get a cool prize this year. So getting to the end of the
if
voting.
you don't, you can always buy yourself one.
Yep, there's no rules against that.
I believe he has to buy himself one no matter what.
Yep, I
think
had to
that's
buy
also
that
true.
last year as well.
Yeah, I don't think they give it away even if you win it.
No, but I was impressed that there was a vetting process. So I actually was like, am I just going to type what I want on this thing and you're just going to send it to me? Because that's awesome. Like, I don't ever have to compete in this again. I'm just going to buy one every year. But no, they're like, which category were you in? Like, there's a verification thing. Okay. So at least that occurs. But
keep in mind, everyone, we need to get a audio guy life coaching website made up
you gotta
before
validate
this time next
thing.
year.
That way we could just come in, sweep the whole damn thing. God, I'll be so pissed if that ever happened.
Like audio life coaching.
.com.
Best of Las Vegas.
I think, it'd be even
That
better
would be
if it
great.
was like audio life coaching some ridiculous like suffix. Like, wouldn't that be even better?
.gov.
.gov. Yes.
Audiolifecoaching.com. What would be the best? Here's what would honestly be the best.
Yeah.
Is if I won without knowing that I was nominated.
And you just, somebody just did the whole thing, created it, nominated it, pushed it, and it just got done. And then all of a sudden, you're like, hey, did you know that you are the best therapist in Las Vegas now? All right. Well,
especially if Jim doesn't win gold again this year.
Yeah.
If I could do better than Jim next year
and just lap me.
Yeah.
That would be
So I need your votes, friends. Come down to
case.
votejim.net. Give me a vote so I can keep, at least this year, since 2022 is a wash. Jacob's already going to grab that trophy. So this is my last year to win one. So let's get it. This is the year.
Silver still be on the table.
Yeah, that's right. Coming up for second place. That's the new gold. So we got some great questions on this one. Some stuff that's been in the hopper now for a minute. So these are really good. I've been wanting to get to these ones. First one is an anonymous letter titled Delta Variant Blues. And I believe it was originally sent in August.
Written by the CEO of Delta Airlines.
Yeah.
Yep.
What am I gonna do?
Founded in my hometown.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Really?
Delta
Monroe,
Airlines.
Louisiana.
Wow.
Louisiana Delta. It was a crop dusting company.
Oh,
Oh.
Yeah.
that's
where
where
they
That
make
actually
sense.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. The more you know.
Yeah.
Delta variant blues. Hey guys, with the new Delta variant surge, I'm falling back into this pattern where I check the news about cases daily and constantly, and I'll feel anxious and scared afterward. I'm frustrated to see the mask mandates coming back and the breakthrough cases in vaccinated people. I live by myself and I work from home, which I know I've been more fortunate than a lot of other people. I do have a social bubble to interact with, and my family is all overseas, but I sometimes FaceTime with them. However, I can feel a lack of motivation to do anything at this point. Shopping, cooking, hiking, dating, whatever. I feel tired of seeing those news titles about the COVID surge. It also feels like it's such a waste of time doing nothing in my late 20s. Prior to the pandemic, I traveled often, internationally, and it was very fulfilling. So, what do you guys suggest doing to keep living in this pandemic reality, potentially in the next year? So, Anonymous.
This is a tough one because we don't have a playbook for this.
Yeah.
We don't.
It's also tough because I think this is the only person who's really concerned with it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
it's- what? So, COVID?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that COVID? I don't know what this is.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've been
Yeah.
having the time of my life.
Yeah. I've been living it up.
Yes. I've seen so many places.
So, I mean, that's the first thing is you're very much not alone.
Yeah. There's that at least.
Yeah. It's tough.
I relate
mean,
to this though. Like checking
sure.
it like a weather report, I do that. Like I
Yeah.
check the numbers. I used to check it daily.
Jim has stayed calmer during Delta than I would have expected.
Thank you.
Yes, I
And-
agree.
If
and-
you had asked me a year
Thank
ago
you.
how calm Jim would be this September,
Yeah.
if there
Would
was
not
a
have
new variant
expected.
out, a couple of new variants, the
Yeah.
Delta just being the biggest of them, he's better than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's with multiple anxiety attacks, like in the midst of all this.
So how have you done it?
Oh, I just hide it. No, I'm not doing well at all. Not at all. You guys just see me for a couple hours once a week, and I manage to bring my pathetic ass in here.
And
it's fine.
that is better than I would have expected.
Yeah,
Yes,
still,
exactly.
still gold ring, Jim.
Yeah.
That's
You
standing
hiding
ovation.
your anxiety is just
It's
unheard
really
of.
impressive.
I'm just saying credit
I
where
get
credit
it.
is due.
I hear it. I checked that thing like a weather report all the time, wondering about the health district, looking at the numbers. Like I keep it very local. Like I'm not looking at like the bad numbers in Israel or New York or what's happening in
Right.
Mississippi. Like that's not relevant to my life. So I'm always checking. I'm now checking it weekly.
Oh, so that's not a bad start. That's not a bad place to start.
Yeah.
Is if you're checking it every day,
Right.
stick to your local news.
Stay in your jurisdiction.
Stick to your local stuff.
That's
yeah.
all I do. And then
That's
I
good-
slowed
that's
it
a good
down,
idea.
start checking it weekly, right? Because I realized it's not a day report. It doesn't matter. You need to learn about the week in reviews. So then I started doing that. So I absolutely relate to the writer in the sense that I think when I read this letter from the writer, the feeling I got was, man, I thought we had this thing. I thought that we got the
Yeah.
vaccines. I thought we crushed the curve. Now this Delta thing's out. And
When at my show they came back with like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're vaccinated or not.
right.
Mask up.
Mask up.
Mask mandates are back.
Yeah.
There
There was a sigh of discontent. Yeah,
Yeah.
a sigh of discontent. And then this sense of like, so what are we going to do? Like, and that's one of the things that I've been reflecting on is, all right, I'm mentally starting to prepare myself. This is going to be a perpetual reality for a while. This variants thing happened quick. Like the Delta variant thing kicked the shit out of original COVID. Like it wasn't even close. Like all of a sudden it was like, yep, 99.9% of all cases across the globe are this one type now. Damn. And it was like, okay. So like, and now they're talking about like the Mu variant and like all these other types that can exist. So Mew. So I'm like preparing myself that there's going to be
The
a
least
change of
aggressive
pace.
sounding variant.
Yeah. It's deceptive.
I'm not worried about that one at all. For
Yeah,
some
that's how it
reason.
gets you,
I don't know.
Tangiman. It just whispers from underneath the table. Mew. You're like, let me just put this in my nose. That was a mistake. That's how it gets you. So I get it. The sigh of discontent that comes with this feeling of like, man, how do we cope whenever this is probably a new perpetual reality? How do you keep your head up? I mean, we can talk about doing the next right thing, right? We could talk about vaccines. Yes, we're healthcare professionals. We're generally on team science. And, we want folks to get out there and protect themselves and their communities, because that does give me a great sense of relief. Like when COVID originally happened, there was no protection from it except hiding from people. That was it. We had one tool in the toolkit. It was stay away from everybody and hide in your house. And now we have tools. I have good masks. We have a better understanding of how helpful they are, and I have the damn vaccines. And so it's like, all right, I have now some weapons that give me some mobility in my society again. And that does give me something to work with. So the first piece of advice I would give this person is, if you haven't gotten vaccinated, I'm going to plug it and say, listen, I'd get vaccinated. It does give you peace of mind.
You heard it
does
here
give
first.
you more. Yep. I'm taking a bold stance. I'm taking a bold stance. Everybody's going to say I'm a shill for Biden.
We haven't gotten enough credit for the
Yeah,
vaccine.
I have
Therapy
not.
has
Yeah,
not
that's
gotten
right.
enough
Yeah, I
credit for the
feel I'm
vaccine.
underserved.
I feel
in the
like
credit
we have.
part. We've gotten 100%.
I feel like we've gotten as much credit as we
It's
deserve.
probably deserved. So that's one thing I'd tell you, Ryder. If you haven't done that, I think that helps. Getting yourself back out there again in whatever ways that you can in a responsible way, and so that's what's given me back some of my life. I got vaccinated. I wear the masks. I follow the rules. I don't bitch about it. I try to eat outdoors. I try to do the next right thing within reason, and I follow the guidance.
Yeah,
There's
all you
guidance
can do
that
is
can
keep
it
your
open.
side of the street clean.
That's it.
Right? You just kind of do what's within your control. I think the other thing, and I always have to watch this too, is I become hyper-focused, and I have to really kind of reel that back in and figure out how to best allocate my attention.
Mm-hmm.
Because I, like, the whole COVID thing, like checking it every day.
Yeah.
For what reason?
It's not
You know,
useful at that point.
Yeah, because I did this too with like I recently got into like investments,
Cool.
investing, and putting money away and in a 401k, and then also investing in the stock market.
Oh,
And I
especially
just-
long-term investments.
Yeah.
Don't check those every day. Yeah, don't do it.
You need to go years without even thinking
Yeah.
about them.
Yeah, but I got into habit like I
Oh no, it's falling! Pull out!
but not only that, but like I was checking it on a daily basis, and I was like, why?
Right.
What has changed?
I'm
Like,
not going to shut this 401k
Yeah,
down.
Yeah.
I've got 2 cents more today than I had
Right.
yesterday,
Right.
or 1 cent less than I had yesterday.
Right.
But it's I don't know what it is, just about the way our brain is wired.
Yes.
We just like, if we have access to it, we
Mhm.
feel like we need to look at it.
Yes.
And then really with the COVID thing, how often realistically do you need to follow that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to say you just need to not look at it at all, because then you're
Well, right.
you're going to
And
create
community spread does matter.
right.
It's a factor.
and it's important to you.
And it does change things.
So I
like
don't-
what you're going to do if you're
Right.
going to go out or not. If you say, "Hey, our community is absolutely saturated with this," I'm going to stay home.
Yeah,
If your hospitals are begging people, please, we don't have any beds. Like, okay, I'm going to do my part, and not be in this mix right
even more than that though too is just like, if it's important to you, I don't want to take it away from you.
now. Okay, sure, yeah,
Kind of like the news. Like
Yeah.
there's you get to that point where you just kind of need to pull back a little bit.
yeah,
But if being informed of what's going on in the world is important to you, then you should still do that.
right,
But you need to kind of set a limit for yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, this is going to be my, Sunday morning ritual. When I turn on
Right.
the news, I'll check
I'm
the
gonna
numbers.
check. Yeah,
something
that's
like
it.
that.
No, I agree with you. I think you can get lost in that kind of stuff.
I would back off and maybe just confine it to your region's statistics.
Yep,
Because that's easy to look at. It's quick.
right.
You go like, what are the numbers today? Good, bam, boom, done.
Done. And making it just a weekly ritual, I think that's a part of this too. This is no longer breaking news every day. And it's tough because, again, this goes back to media and it goes back to news and all these other things. It's still the top story in the world. And so they're constantly like, and that's one of the things I've really struggled with. One of the things that when you have anxiety, one of the things you have to constantly train yourself in is your brain will jump to outcomes that scare you. And they're scary to you because they're newsworthy, right? They're rare. They're shocking by design, right? That's why it scares you. And that's what will happen is your brain will latch onto that thought and you'll believe that's possible. That outcome is likely.
Right.
But the inherent quality of something being unusual and newsworthy and scary is that it is not common.
Well, there was a study that was done several months ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it was among, I believe this was after the vaccine had come out,
Mhm.
but maybe shortly after, and the question was posed: what percentage of people who are unvaccinated who get COVID
Oh, yeah.
have to go to the hospital.
Right, right.
And people were guessing like 50%.
Oh, wow.
The guesses were coming in between 40 and 60%, a lot of
This
them.
is what people thought
This is what people
the
thought.
answer would be based on
Yes.
their consumption of media.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the answer, was like 5%.
Right, right.
Maybe it was 7.
It
but
was very
whatever.
small.
But it was, it's single digit. And don't write. I know I'm wrong about whatever the number is. I know I'm wrong about every number I've just said.
The point is, it was very tiny, but people perceived it as very big.
Yes, because that's what the news. That's
what you
it's
hear
your
about.
point. That's the news.
You hear
because
the
that
scary
is-
stuff.
That
It's
is
newsworthy.
That's the most interesting part.
If it bleeds, it leads. And I've struggled with that because, like, I saw a story not too long ago. A lot of people saw this. A family of five kiddos, 2 parents, both parents in their 30s, both got COVID and died. 2 parents dead, orphan family.
Yeah.
That's what Jim needs to hear.
Yeah. Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was shaking like a leaf, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like this could happen to us. And so, like, got really, but again, I have to coach myself just like I do with my patients and say, hold on, Jim, where did you read that?
Yeah.
In the news. Okay. Is that an eye-catching title? Is that an eye-catching story? Yes, it is.
Did it
Is
happen to
something-
both of my next door neighbors?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you feel like you should tell another person about that? Would you sit down with another person and go, "Hey, did you hear about this?" Yeah, I probably would respond like that. Okay, why? Because it's rare. And this is the zebra and horses thing that we talk
Right,
about in
yeah.
therapy a lot. You go with the horse explanation, the common thing. So that's one piece of advice to the writer that I would offer is if you find yourself getting anxious, again, because you're checking it so much, I want to challenge that. I also want to challenge things like consumption of news because there's being informed about a global crisis, and then there's being,
fixating.
Yeah, fixating on it.
Which-
and that's distracting, really.
Which is interesting as we've switched from news at 6 p.m.
Right.
5 days a week to
Yeah.
now 24-hour networks.
Right.
The burden of managing this
Yeah.
has fallen on us as
Us.
opposed to it used to be on the networks.
The editors said they
Right.
don't need this. They don't need to know this.
Yeah, so we have to now manage all that.
It
And
went
so,
from
yeah.
information to infotainment.
Yeah,
And
right.
now we're dancing in that reality.
Now, the other part that the writer talks about is what are they going to do because they're used to
How to
traveling. How do
recapturing
we
that?
do all that?
Yeah, how do you break out of your mundane kind of self-secluded rituals, getting out there again? And that's a good question.
I think everybody's gonna have to figure out their own way of doing that. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, I try to find something like this is a great time if you've ever wanted to learn a new skill or learn to do something or wanted to learn about something.
Mhm.
Now is a great time to do it.
Yeah.
Because it's something that you can do hopefully within your home. If you've ever wanted to learn how to play an instrument, now's a great time to do it.
Yeah.
If you ever want to learn another language, now's a great time to do it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good, interesting stuff that you could be doing
Yeah.
just to kind of keep your brain active and focusing on something. I think learning is very important, and I think that's probably why the writer talks about travel. That's one of the great things about travel is it's experimental learning.
Right.
And though you don't get to leave your house, you don't get to experience that way, but if you can kind of do something else that's kind of stimulates your brain in the same way.
I think that's a huge
That
piece
would
of this
be helpful.
puzzle. And the other thing that I would suggest, writer, that I know that I've done and I've seen a lot of other people do, I think that a lot of people have adapted by utilizing all this technology to try new things. Like there's all these online D&D groups now, Dungeons
yeah,
and
yeah.
Dragons. That's a big thing. Even our fantasy football league, we do our fantasy football league, and we did it on Zoom, and like we did our live draft, and we talked to all the other league members, and we had a big thing, and I did a big silly intro, and but there we are engaging with each other, and friendships are forming on a distance level. So there's always creative ways to integrate your technology, like you mentioned, writer, FaceTiming with people. You said you used to go for hikes. I've pitched it a bunch on the show. This company really should be sponsoring us at this point because I've done a lot for them. But meetup.com. I love that as a place to get ideas. Go to meetup.com, type in your zip code. You can see all the different groups in your area. A lot of them are outdoor. And they need to be right now, and they are. And they're like, hey, come do this volleyball group. Hey, come do this hiking group. And then a bunch of them are Zoom now. And they're like, hey, this is a book club, and we're going to talk about things.
I do
meets
Zoom
by Zoom.
hiking.
Zoom hiking sounds great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just tie a camera to somebody's chest, they go, and then I just sit there drinking a beer and commenting. Watch out for that rock.
I got this
Good
Sherpa
job.
out in Nepal
He
who wears a camera.
Yeah, I climbed
Yeah.
Everest again
Yep.
last night. Did you? Yeah, I'm crushing. It's third time this week. But you're in the right boat, man. I mean, we're with you, and like I understand travel. A lot of people are ready to get back to that again. And again, I'd say get vaccinated, follow the rules, follow best practices. Don't over study the situation. Kind of go with the bigger updates as they come out. Stick to the best practices. I just know the CDC guidelines and I do what I'm told. Mm-hmm. And generally, if you follow the rules, generally you'll be okay, right? It's supposed to be written in such a way that you can function again and take reasonable amounts of risk. And that's what the name of the game is at this point. It's reasonable risk, and then trying to diversify your life as much as you can and being very careful about those anxiety holes of infotainment, getting sucked into news stories that scare the shit out of you because they're designed to get clicks. It's a real thing. It really happened. Two people really did die, and those children really don't have parents anymore. And it's horrific. And it was internationally clicked on because even the people in Germany were like, holy shit, did you hear about what happened in California? Yeah. Because it was newsworthy. And if it's newsworthy, it's rare. Yeah. Inherently rare. Yeah. So big questions. A lot of us relate to this.
And if you're a Patreon and you want to comment on the thread about what you've been doing, go ahead and do that.
Yes,
that'd be
we'd love to hear ideas. Always good to hear what people are up to.
Thanks for writing in.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about watching porn when you're bored. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, Scott Jameson, Richard Macy, and Lord Colin Stewart. Would you like to sponsor a show? Become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. This week's trivia theme in honor of our therapy producers is our first in a series of Jacob and Jim take the CPT exam.
Ah, shit.
Question 1. What is the CPT exam?
Certified personal trainer. Very fitting for our Patreon.
Yes, our Patreon was a deep dive into fitness. Patreon.com/therapy.
Here's your question.
A lot of free advice in that one.
The muscle action that occurs when a muscle develops tension while lengthening is known as what?
Coitus. Final answer.
A. Eccentric. B. Concentric. C. Isometric. Or D. Isokinetic. If you'd like to join the therapy producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy.
What are you thinking? I think the ISO ones feel right. The concentric circles tell me that is not the answer.
Define concentric circles.
All right. Have you ever seen a
If you're going to bring this up as your example, I need to know that you know what that example is.
I don't feel that that's relevant.
I'm going to call bullshit.
Yeah, I don't feel that that's relevant to my point.
Good.
I'm saying I've heard this word used with geometry.
Very good.
I don't think it has shit to do with this. So I'm ruling that one out. Eccentric obviously isn't it. That's people. People are eccentric.
No, not eccentric.
It wasn't eccentric.
What was it?
Eccentric.
I feel that it's the same thing.
Okay.
Eccentric is just being flamboyant and outward online. That's what that is.
It's not, but go ahead.
Yeah. It's being an extrovert online.
I like where you're going with this.
So obviously those two are not it. Isometric
what was the first one?
Isopropyl.
Okay, first one is eccentric.
Uh-huh.
B, concentric. C, isometric. D, isokinetic.
I feel like the last one's not even real. I think that's made up.
Okay.
I'm going with
what is the question?
Okay, the muscle action that occurs when a muscle develops tension while lengthening is known as what?
Okay. So when you're stretching the muscle, it gets tense because it's lengthening, right?
The muscle's lengthening, yes.
Yeah, because when you're lifting something, you're contracting the muscle.
Correct.
Am I onto something, or am I just
no?
Okay,
I'm just saying it with
proud that I got that.
enthusiasm.
Okay, thanks for the support. I
But
appreciate
it was
that.
correct.
It was correct.
So when you're stretching it, the muscle is tense because it's like a guitar string. It's being pulled, and so it's becoming firm. I'm going with isometric.
Isometric. Okay.
That feels right to me.
Okay.
I'm going to go concentric because of the way that Jim railed against it. That'll be the funniest one if it's right.
Okay.
It's definitely not concentric.
It is not concentric.
Fuck
It's
yeah.
also not. It's not isometric.
I'm fine.
Okay, and what were the other
Okay.
two?
Eccentric, concentric.
Now I'm kind of thinking it's.
And
No,
isokinetic.
I think it's isokinetic.
It is not isokinetic.
It was
okay.
eccentric.
It is eccentric.
Eccentric.
So concentric is the muscle is tension as it's
Constricting.
shortening.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
constricting.
All right.
Eccentric is the negative. So the muscle is under tension as it's lengthening.
Uh-huh.
That's the eccentric movement.
Okay. It's eccentric. So when your muscles are eccentric.
They wear
No,
Kleenex boxes on their feet.
Yeah. I like it. All right.
Okay.
I feel ready to take the exam.
Yeah,
I'm right there now. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go. Next question is a good one here. This one comes from a writer named Julie, and she writes, "How common is it for men to look at porn when they're bored? My husband seems to pull it up
It's better than looking at it when you have something else you need to be doing.
My husband seems to pull it up every chance he has free time on his phone. Is that what happens when you beat Candy Crush?" Thanks, Julie.
I couldn't tell you. I've not beaten Candy Crush.
Well, that's why, you got to stick to the Candy Crush. All right. So,
Sorry, I was on my phone. What was the question?
yeah, sorry. Yeah. Also, you need to go ahead and.
I was just clearing my browser history.
That's right. This question came in a little hot. All right. So, watching porn
I
when
feel
you're
attacked.
bored. I feel seen. Is it the fundamental question here we're asking is how common is it? And then I'm sure if we have any reflections or feedback. So I don't know that we would be able to speak to how common it is.
Well, how common is it for you, Jim?
Yeah, let's start there. Let's why don't we each write down a number? We'll all just read it at the same time.
Sure we will.
I don't even know what this
fine.
number is going to
Sure
mean.
will.
Infinity symbol. Yeah. So I think that's something I have heard about. So I have had people that will tell me that it's become a passive thing for them. It's not, this is, me in my private time. This is not related to my partner and how we're getting excited about things. It's just this passive thing that I leave on in the background like CNBC. And it's just there. I've had patients
Exactly
tell me
like
about that.
CNBC.
It's identical to just watching the stocks. So I've had people that do that. Now, when I've had people that are doing that, it usually is a situation where the case also is some kind of erectile dysfunction, where they've been having a hard time becoming aroused with their partner. And then whenever I probe deeper and learn about, all sexuality stuff, the patterns that they're doing, this is one of them where they're like, yeah, just keep it on the background. Like, okay, so like, why? I don't know. I find it interesting. It's fun to look at, whatever. It's a break, but obviously what's happening though is you're desensitizing the neurology associated with sexuality to the point when it's time to have sex. It's like, oh, nothing happens. And it's like, what's wrong with me? It's like, well, like you were just constantly desensitizing your body to this. So yeah, eventually nothing happens.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Julie doesn't say that's what's happening in her love life, but she's saying, I'm concerned. Like, this seems like it's an all the time thing. So when I have seen it, that tends to be one of the factors, is that they're also experiencing some kind of problem.
So I guess with this question, I mean, is it just is that the question, that just watching
How
it
common is it?
just randomly, or is there like a masturbation component to this?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because I think that kind of changes this a little bit.
Yeah, my
It sounds
husband
like
seems
no.
to pull it up every
Yeah.
chance he has free time on his phone.
As in, like, just to watch it, just
Just having it there.
as kind of boredom.
I mean, it's funnier if her husband masturbates every time he has any free
I believe there was
Well,
a character
and
on
that is a
Conan
different-
O'Brien that did that. I think it was a bear. I think that's that's all it did.
I don't know.
Just ran around doing that. Yeah, that would change the game a little bit.
Yeah, because that's a different thing that we're talking about.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, it could be compulsive masturbation. But that's a
Right.
good question. Is it getting to a place where it's compulsive? And yeah, like, this is something we've talked about before on the show. People have written in and said, hey, is it really a thing to become addicted to pornography or addicted to, things like sexuality? Yeah, it's a process addiction, just like gambling, because anything that is part of the pleasure and reward center of your brain, the brain can get stuck on that loop, reinforcing it over and over and over again until it now compulsively seeks that reinforcement.
well, and it's similar to a drug in that you develop that tolerance to it.
Yes, and
That-
you need more and more and more.
Right.
And you're
it's kind of
constantly
that
doing it.
Desensitization thing.
Yeah,
too.
and that could be a factor here. You
Yeah.
know, so to speak to how common
I
is
don't
it?
have any hard evidence.
Any throbbing evidence? Any hard, veiny?
I've got an idea. Let me run this one up the pole.
I walked right into that one.
Oh, this is a double blind
left
study
a stamp
right
on
here.
your forehead.
I don't have any data
Ah,
on this. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know of any statistics that are out there as far as like
No.
how often or how common this is.
I will say it's definitely becoming more common because we're hearing more about it now. Where because it's infinitely available. You
Right.
can do it privately.
It's not shamed.
It's not shamed, and that's fine. But I think that we're starting to see a lot more prevalence, not only of porn usage generally, but like in every kind of environment. Like you'll see videos on Reddit and stuff of like people with their laptop open in the middle of their college class. And like they're just sitting there watching Pornhub, or something like that. And everybody's like looking at each other like this guy's really just doing this. And it's like, yeah, it is becoming more and more of a thing.
By the way, that should be shamed.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is
There are places for shame.
yeah, this is probably one of them. So it is becoming increasingly common. I mean, and I don't want to pass a judgment on it. I don't want to look at it and say this is wrong or right.
Well, I guess, and that's ultimately what we need to get to is it causing a problem? Like,
Yeah.
is this having a negative effect on the relationship? Is it something that you
I assume it
are
is to a
concerned
degree.
about? Yeah, probably. In which case, yeah, I think that's a good discussion to have and to be able to express kind of your thoughts and feelings about that.
Yeah. And I do think it's fair, if you have a loved one that seems to be doing this, again, asking that question like, hey, do you feel this is like out of your control at this point? Like, where are you at? And everybody will say, I can quit anytime, like that's the classic addict answer, right? But I do think if you're out there and you relate to the husband and you're like, well, wait a minute. Yeah, I do just kind of keep this stuff on in the background, or yeah, I do just thumb through it, whenever I have 5 minutes, whatever, it's what I'm doing. That's not inherently wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But I definitely become curious about, how that affects you, if it does at all. And perhaps you say, no, not really. Just some people like to look up sports scores. Some people like to go through TikTok, and this is what I do.
We haven't discussed as well. I mean, the husband could have a very possibly overly active sex drive as well.
Could be that too.
Oh, yeah.
Could
Yeah.
just be a very high sex drive, and they don't want to, annoy with it, and so this is them just engaging, their sexuality, and that could be very healthy and fine. So, and I don't hear Julie passing any judgment about it, but hey, asking, hey, how common is
I think
this?
writing into a therapy show is passing a little judgment.
It's alert. Yeah, I think she's alert. Wondering how often it happens. Is this what happens when you beat Candy Crush?
Right.
Yeah. Just
I hear
just bored.
That was pretty
a reasonable amount of judgment in the email.
There's some scrutiny being applied here. So it's a good question, Julie. I would just say, if you're concerned about it, communicate it. Asking about your loved one if they're okay, if there's something that is the matter, and it always reminding them that if they would like to ever talk about it with a therapist and just kind of pop the hood and check on that, they can. That's definitely a conversation I've had with multiple patients, and usually, obviously, they're presenting to therapy because something's not going well, and then we dig a little deeper and find out this is also happening, and usually seems to be adjacent to their presenting problem. So, okay, then we're working together to make sure that's not part of the equation anymore. So
Right.
that can happen, but yeah, this can become a compulsive thing. Again, we're not pathologizing this behavior right now. We're just acknowledging that it can also grow into a problem.
I mean, I don't know of anybody that just watches it just for entertainment, but I mean, it
You
sounds
need more
like
friends.
you do.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying, but like you've
Spinning it back on me. Good
no,
job.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like you've
Yeah.
worked with people that will,
Oh.
like you said, that just have it on, that
Yeah.
they'll just be watching like TV.
Yes.
Like I can't relate to that.
Yeah.
I don't really.
Oh yeah,
understand
I've had
that.
patients that they've even gotten in trouble because it's on a work computer or whatever, or they're on the work Wi-Fi, and then they're using their phone. It's their property. They're on their phone, but they're on the Wi-Fi. And so, like, the tech guy can go through the IPs and realize, like, yeah, man, like, we know you're doing this. And it's like, oh, I'm getting my job done and stuff. It's like, yeah, but we're uncomfortable, like, this is going on.
Yeah.
So I've absolutely had patients where that's happened.
But just like watching it, just like it's a movie,
just in the
Like,
background. They're not doing anything. They're not, touching themselves. Nothing's happening. They're just flicking through it.
They just want to see if he actually fixes the cable.
Yeah. I think that's what it is, Nick. I think that they're watching to the end of the plot.
I want to know what
He
happens.
is a terrible pizza delivery person.
Yeah, that is not professionalism. Yeah, he never did fix the plumbing thing. There was an entire he didn't do anything.
Who carries around a whole sausage?
That is not how you're supposed to do that. That's not how you top a pizza. Yeah. So yeah, that might be part of it too. But good question, and if anybody has feedback, patreon.com/therapy, throw your comments onto this one. And hey, give some coaching.
I would like to say that I'm proud of us for taking that question as seriously as we did.
We did a damn good job on that one.
We hardly giggled at all.
No, look at us. We're all maturing here. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about fear of abandonment and betrayal. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Today's episode is brought to you by Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, Scott Jameson, Richard Macy, and Lord Colin Stewart. If you'd like to sponsor the show, become a therapy producer at patreon.com/therapy. Our second question for Jacob and Jim take the CPT exam is...
Which CPT exam is what, Jim?
Oh, shit. Clinical professional trainer.
Certified
Close enough.
Personal trainer.
I was
Close
damn
But he got
close.
all the letters right.
He did.
Yeah, I
He
didn't
did get all the letters
I didn't say
right.
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
All right. During a pull-up exercise, the biceps brachii take on what muscle function? A, agonist, B, antagonist, C, synergist, or D, stabilizer. If you'd like to join the therapy producers and make the show possible, go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
All right, some of those are clearly bullshit. Some of those were clearly not even in contention to be considered.
Oh, which ones?
Okay, agonist? Was that one of the
Yes,
things you said?
yes.
I don't think so. I think that's
Okay.
chemistry. I think that shit has to do with chemistry. I remember something about this.
I think
I saw it in
love when
Breaking
you
Bad.
talk through your answers.
Oh, yeah. No.
This is
So wait, did you say antagonist?
agonist,
Yeah, that's from chemistry. That's
antagonist,
bullshit. Oh, that's from fucking literature.
synergist,
Antagonist is the bad guy in a movie, Nick.
and stabilizer.
Oh, I'm not falling for any of this shit. All right, I see right through your fucking game.
Jim is going with none of the above.
Oh, they're all bullshit. Agonist is something from chemistry. I remember it in Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Antagonist is bad guys in movies. That's obvious. What were the other
They're
two?
not necessarily bad guys.
Synergist,
That sounds like a business plan.
stabilizer.
That's it. I'm going with stabilizers.
Motherfucker, I was going to go with stabilizer.
Because that's the right answer. We got it, didn't we?
No,
Fuck
you're
your
both
test. Oh, really?
wrong. Yes.
Oh,
I know.
it was-
I want to pick a different one since Jim
Oh,
picked stabilizer.
okay. Yes.
oh, now
I,
that he knows that's not the good one.
now I will say then antagonist.
Oh, it's definitely not that. Go with the third one. What was the third one?
Synergist.
Wow, that one doesn't feel right either. That feels like a business thing. All right, but I changed my answer to synergist.
Okay, you can't do that.
Well, I just did it.
But yes, synergist is correct.
Exactly.
But they're all real.
They're definitely all real because it's
Yes.
all on the CPT. On the CPT.
Oh, are those really the answers offered on the question?
These are practice.
Yeah, I don't
quizzes.
think
Oh,
Nick-
wow.
yeah.
I
You didn't
don't
just
think
make
Nick
any of
made
that
these
up. Antagonist is a
Okay.
fitness word?
So you're doing a pull-up.
Yeah.
Right?
Antagonist is
well, I can't
not
actually, but go
It's
on.
also not necessarily the bad
So-
guy in literature.
It's-
either.
they're just
Right.
against the protagonist.
Against.
Again.
Against. That's the key word.
Okay,
Oh.
antagonist is usually
He-
the person driving in a story. It's the person kind of driving the arc, the narrative arc.
Okay, so the agonist is the muscle causing the movement.
Okay.
Okay. The antagonist would be the muscle on the opposite side of that. that would
Resisting
be
that muscle
resisting the
movement.
movement.
Interesting.
So in a bicep curl,
Yep.
agonist is the bicep,
Yep.
Who's the villain in the
antagonist
bicep?
is the tricep.
Correct. Yep.
Great. I have just
Interesting.
exhausted my
Jacob's out.
All of them. So in the
So-
drama of physical fitness, the muscles are fighting one another.
The synergist is a muscle that isn't directly causing the movement, but is assisting.
Okay.
Okay. So think of as you're doing a
Ah,
pull-up,
okay.
your biceps are constricting.
Yeah.
They're not the driving muscle,
Yeah.
okay, but they are
They're
synergistically
part of
acting
it,
with it.
And they're not
okay?
resisting it.
Yes.
Huh.
Your stabilizer muscles would be muscles that are that are holding you.
Maybe
still.
the core.
Exactly.
In a lot
right.
of it. Okay.
So so if you're doing squats, your abs
are just
going to be your stabilizing muscles.
Yeah, they matter in this, but they're not doing the action.
Correct.
What is the agonist one?
The agonist is the muscle that would be on the opposite end of it, that would be not necessarily fighting it, but it would be the movement, holding the movement in the opposite direction. So like
Man.
Jacob used the example of a bicep curl.
You're
So
accidentally causing me to respect personal trainers.
So
I didn't know they knew all this.
Yeah. So your bicep is lifting the weight.
Yeah.
Your tricep is the opposite end here. Right?
That's an agonist?
Antagonist.
Antagonist.
Right.
Okay. Man. All right. Whatever.
There you
I
go.
feel like I've learned a lot. And also, for the record, I got it right. So.
And no, you didn't.
On the
Actually,
second try.
You're 0 for 2. So far, you're failing the test.
It's weak. Whatever.
Yeah.
Fear of abandonment and betrayal. I am getting caught up on all of your episodes, which is why I'm here. I just listened to the episode on the Coolidge effect. Oh, that was a good one.
You're going to have to... I don't remember this.
I'll remind you guys.
It's regarding a former president.
Yeah, Calvin Coolidge, who visited a farm with his wife. And this is the one with the hen house, where the rooster's drilling all the hens. And Mrs. Coolidge, or what is it? Mrs. Coolidge asks about it. And like the farmer's like, yeah, that one rooster... Yeah, he's basically doing everything. And she was like, hey, when you bring my husband over to this part of the farm, like, I want you to point that out and tell him that I wanted you to point that out. And the farmer's like, okay. And so then he brings Calvin Coolidge over there later, and he says, Mrs. Coolidge wanted me to highlight the fact that this rooster has the stamina to just keep going. And Calvin Coolidge laughed and said, I'd like you to highlight for my wife that there's more than one hen. And that's what science calls the Coolidge effect, which has to do with, like, the male refractory period being cut in half when presented with another partner. Like, that they suddenly regroup quicker and move on.
Oh, okay.
Which, of course, we had to do because there'd be, like, a war, and then there'd be, like, one dude in the tribe.
Right.
If we're going to keep these people alive, he's got to keep going.
Interesting.
So, okay. So the writer says,
Right.
I just listened to the episode on the Coolidge effect, and while I've been able to maintain some control over a lot of my strong emotions, I felt an immediate surge of bitterness, anger, and sadness about this topic. Jim had said, you don't even need to involve another woman, you can just watch some porn. But my internal response was, that is another woman. Of course, then I realized how confining and irrational that was, but I still feel it.
It's also making assumptions about Jim's pornography choices.
As you can guess, I haven't been in many long-term serious relationships, and I actively rejected many people trying to connect more deeply than platonically or sexually. I recognize that I chose the wrong people to trust, but at the end of the day, I don't think it helps me with the deep-seated inferiority I feel in a relationship. In a relationship, I feel like a different person. Not confident, not strong, not capable of looking at the circumstances from all sides, which I think I am outside of romantic scenarios. I feel akin to a cornered animal, ever watchful of every moment, and ready to maul and dash away at the first sign of danger. I'm scared of the abandonment, the betrayal, and it hasn't even happened. How do I move past this? I know that this is how the world works. I know that I'm the abnormality, and I dealt with that by declaring myself forever unavailable. But at nearly 30 years old, I only recently had the nerve to finally admit to myself and a few close friends that while I am comfortable with being alone forever, I don't necessarily want to be. But those emotions are so gripping that I can't shake them, even 4 years, 9 years, 13 years from the events that I let control how I love. What can I do? P.S. I found Jim so annoying at first, I wasn't sure I could keep listening. But god damn it, he's funny and endearing. I don't often laugh out loud at podcasts, TV, etc., but Nick, Jim, and Jacob, you've got great chemistry, and I'm here for it. Also, if y'all could recommend some men's mental health 501c, I need a nonprofit to submit to my employer for my charity donations. Thanks, Anonymous.
That's awesome.
Oh, very nice of you to say.
I found Jim annoying at first, and I wasn't sure I could keep listening. This
Yeah,
is
that feels about right.
Jim's mom said the exact same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But she grew to love him as well.
Many have said.
I'm still in the at first phase.
Yeah. I'm still giving this a shot.
I'm still assuming this is at first.
I'm still working my way along. This is a good question. So to summarize it, the way that I hear what the writer's saying, I think the writer's saying, so when I'm in relationships, I am very insecure. I am very brittle. I am very fragile. And when she's talking about the pornography show and things, what the writer is talking about there is just even that was very abrasive and irritating. And she was saying like, and I know that's a me thing. Like you're allowed to not be okay with porn and things like that. But the writer's saying, I know for me, I get very inferior. I get very fearful. I get very jealous, and I will be very sensitive, to that. That would scare me to even find out that my partner's watching other things or notices other people, and this harms my relationships. And as soon as I feel threatened, I run away. I abandon the relationships. I cut and run. I'm scared of being hurt, and it's caused me to intentionally just be alone. But I don't want to do that forever. And so that's what we're writing in about. So this is a really good question.
Yeah. And we don't have any, I don't think we got any pronouns on this one. So,
No.
But I'm not sure. But so with the writer talking about feeling, where was it? Different or abnormal.
Yeah.
I don't think this is all that abnormal, to be honest. I think this is pretty common. I think a lot of people can probably share in this sentiment.
I think so. Yeah, I think it's a normal human thing to fear. And the two things that the writer highlights, abandonment, I fear that a partner that I'm starting to care for will ditch me, and betrayal. I fear that a partner I care for will suddenly be interested in somebody else, and that's devastating, so much so that I run away, or I become abrasive with the partner and I'm jealous, and it causes me to wrong size a lot of my reactions in relationships.
So when you're single, it's not an issue.
Sure,
and you're fine,
nobody can hurt you.
But then you miss having a relationship. Then we have a
Yes.
relationship. Then it becomes uncomfortable. And
Yeah. So I have a whole theory about why this happens.
Okay, let's hear it.
I've seen this before where...
You see, it starts with Calvin Coolidge.
Sorry, let me explain this farm thing back to you. You really need to hear the story again. So here's where I think about it. I think that whenever you have somebody who has a jealous, big fear reaction to everything, and I've had couples like this where a spouse will come in and say, my partner is really, really fearful. They want to go through my phone. They want to know who I had lunch with. They're constantly accusing me of things, and they get all worked up about things. And this is really hard to deal with because, like, I'm not doing anything wrong, and they're being very sensitive and very dominating and very protective. And what's the deal? And you'll get into all this, and I think you'll learn several things, or at least in my experience. I tend to notice the deep-seated fear of vulnerability that the person has, that they are actually... They'll come off as angry and they'll come off as suspicious, but what's really underneath that is, of course, personal fear. It's a fear that I am vulnerable to being hurt by you. Oftentimes, there's also trauma history where they have been hurt in past relationships, betrayed, abandoned, and that really does cause a trauma imprint in their brain that causes them to outsize react to situations in a way that doesn't really match, doesn't really make sense. And the second thing is almost textbook generalized anxiety disorder. Almost textbook. It's just a different anxiety profile, where some people have anxiety disorder very much fixating on health concerns, like am I having a heart attack, am I dying? Or if you're me, fear that something bad will happen to people that you care about. In this case, it's specifically an anxiety of infidelity, betrayal, abandonment, and they will catastrophize and fall into some of the same cognitive distortions that are feeding other forms of anxiety. And in that way, it's very textbook, but it can be deceptive because it comes off as a relationship issue. It comes off as a jealousy issue. We don't think of jealousy as anxiety, but I tend to now, especially in cases that sound similar to what this writer's describing. That's what it sounds like to my ears. I hear anxiety and trauma.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see that. So how do you approach that? How do you deal with that in a...
I think step one, if they're not in a relationship, it's a much fertilized.
Yeah.
The point I'm trying to say is the rooster is
Fertler.
in the hen house.
Fertile sounds
Yeah,
right.
let's go with that.
There's no way that's wrong.
Fertile. Yeah. It's an easier job. Okay.
More fertile.
Yeah, that one.
I think it's croissant.
Oh, don't even go there again. I can't. I just can't. My blood pressure goes way up. So it's a lot easier to work with somebody on this whenever they're single because they're not getting lost in the news of the day. Whenever I have a couple and this person's manifesting all this fear and it's complicating the relationship, I'm trying to get them to notice the anxiety nature of this, how it's in you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard for them because they're saying, okay, that's fine, Jim, but here's the thing. They took a phone call the other day and they walked outside so I couldn't hear it. Don't you think that that's wrong? Don't you think that that's it's like, okay, now we're getting so distracted in the case study that I can never get them to notice how their thought profile works. So when you get a letter like this, that's a great person to coach because you go, hey, you're self-aware, you notice this. So where I would want to help them is I'd want to start by doing a trauma timeline. Okay, I'd want to sit down and say, teach me about your relationship history. Where did you learn distrust? Where did you develop a fear of betrayal? Where did you learn a fear of abandonment? It could be childhood stuff that was not even about romantic things. It could be friendships, could be anything. But at some point, this became a kryptonite for you. This became a mental allergy. And then around that nucleus of the trauma, we've probably had the secondary problem of cognitive distortions and anxiety features, right? So that's where I'm going to walk that person through CBT. And we're going to start identifying how your mind immediately rushes to worst casing, how we catastrophize. When it comes to inferiority, how are we doing that mental filter and disqualifying the positive? How are we fixating on flaws and believing that those are outsized from reality? How are we failing to see our strengths and our positives? How are we failing to trust the intentions of others? How are we doing mind reading, where we're assuming that they have all these nefarious plans or they're susceptible to infidelity or whatever's going to happen? And then how are we not being able to see beyond that fear, right? All of those things that I'm describing there are contributing factors to anxiety. So if I was helping a person like this, beginning with trauma landscaping, understanding that first, then starting to pivot into, I just want to deal with this as if it was an anxiety disorder. And I think if we can do that first, you'll find that a lot of the dynamics that you've noticed in relationships that you think are relationshipy problems were actually anxiety and trauma problems. And then usually these other things start to get better over time. But then, of course, it all goes out the window as soon as they get into a relationship. So I've had situations like this where when they're single, we do some really meaningful work. We really climb the mountain. We get to some cool places. And then they get into a relationship because they've made so much progress. And the whole damn thing falls apart real quick because that's powerful. It's like re-engaging with a trauma, right? And so I'm there to monitor them and try to pick them up and get them back on their feet quicker. But yeah, we have to be prepared to have a few steps backward and hopefully regain that momentum and not lose the relationship in the meantime.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, a big part of just being in a relationship, I mean, the thing that makes relationships meaningful is the vulnerability.
Right.
That's how you develop that intimacy. But then obviously that just leaves you wide open for being hurt. So yeah, if you're able to deal with that while you're single prior to getting into the next relationship, that would definitely be I think the right way to deal with that.
Yeah. And again, it's very relatable. A lot of people, their fear profile is just like yours. And you know what? I give you this. I mean, in your letter, I think that you were able to say, look, I know I struggle with this. But hey, a lot of people struggle with this at various levels of severity, and that's the thing about.
I would argue everybody struggles with it,
Yes.
just to different levels, right?
Yes. Fear of being betrayed or abandoned by an intimate partner is probably right up there with fear of death on like the most primitive levels of the human conscious mind. Like, it's right up there with that. I think it's something every human relates to. Even if they are somebody who comes... I've had countless patients over the years who are part of polyamory lifestyles, open relationships, and absolutely they are vulnerable to being hurt, betrayed, abandoned. That absolutely is part of their fear complexes, and it does happen, and it is a problem. Even though they're able to get out there and share, it's still very much a hardwired thing to I think, the human species. So I definitely want to validate the writer because I think this is very common. But my angle of attack, when you ask that direct question, how would you help with something like this? I would want you doing some trauma work. I would want you doing anxiety-focused work, treating this as an anxiety condition first, Again, I have a million questions I would want to ask
Sure.
if you were my patient, because that would very much cater what I'm going to do. But just at a glance, hearing what, kind of got in your head about this and how unsettling it is for you, I would think that, But also, people are allowed to have personal standards, and I think that's important too, because sometimes people will say, well, I don't consider it cheating that I was watching porn. And the partner might say, okay, but I don't feel good about this, right?
Mhm.
And so I want to be heard on this, And that's something that's more relationship therapy, where we're going to sit
Right.
down and communicate values, and we're going to communicate personal standards and boundaries and what rights we do have to impose our standard or our boundary on our partner when their behavior does hurt us and make us feel personally betrayed or attacked. And how do we right size that? Which is going to loop back around to individual work and anxiety stuff and perception stuff. But if you're in a relationship, that is going to be discussed while we do it.
Yep.
It's a big part of it. Great question, Ryder.
Yeah, very
And
good.
glad that you stuck around and got through my obnoxious and abrasive personality to the sweet,
in.
creamy nougat of good
Yeah.
humor.
Write in and tell us how you did it.
Yeah, that's really what we need to find out. Yeah, it's probably just lean in. Lean in, your ears are going to bleed for a while, then they'll scab up, and then you'll be okay. I think that's probably how it goes.
Perhaps.
Great question. Before we end the show, since we have a few minutes to go here, we have a reply letter. Every once in a while, somebody writes us a follow-up letter to something that's happened in the past, and I have one. So
I have not seen this yet, so I'm a little
it's a good
scared.
one. That's a good one. It's from Sally Boop Scoop. And
hi,
Sally
Sally.
Boop Scoop wrote us just to say thanks. Hey, Jim, Nick, and life coach Jacob.
Woo.
I wrote in last spring, and my letter was read on episode 171. I'm a late discovery adoptee and was struggling with building relationships with my biological family, as well as, more importantly, understanding my own feelings that kept bubbling up. I ordered all the books that you guys recommended and downloaded a whole lot of podcasts. It's been hard. It took me 5 months to get through The Primal Wound, which is one of the books, because of the emotional journey it takes you on, but I'm diving in and reading it again. Listening to the Adoptees On podcast has been so valuable as well. Thank you guys so much for giving me a starting point on the journey. Since then, I've joined a few Facebook groups that lift up marginalized voices of adoptees. I've cultivated 2 great but very different adoptee communities for myself on Instagram and Twitter and made a few new friends. I've bought new books and have been reached out to by the author of one because it spoke to me so much, Megan Culhane Galbraith, the author of The Guide of the Infant
Nobody
Savior.
pronounces book titles better than Jim.
Nailed it. It's an amazing read and photo journey. I never would have done these things without the validation and gentle support in your response to my initial letter. I really feel like I'm beginning to understand what it means to be an adoptee and see how it has shaped my life. I feel like I'm beginning to unburden myself from some of the weights I've previously not understood. I'm finding my voice and figuring out who I actually am. Being adopted is a lifelong journey, and the trauma that happens when a child is separated from its natural family is real. As a late discovery adoptee, I didn't know I was until I was 39, yet you could check off so many boxes in the separation trauma checklist, if there was one. I felt like a horrible kid for thinking and feeling the way I did, but now there's validation. It's overwhelmingly amazing. So guys, thanks for reading my letter, taking the time to get me really great resources. They have helped, and I recommend them to any adoptee or part of the adoption triad that may find them useful as well. Love you guys. Heather, a.k.a. Little Sally Scoop.
That is awesome.
Nice.
That's
Great
great
one.
to hear that.
Always like to hear a victory story.
Yeah, I like the fact that you have gone from kind of that trauma piece of that shock into kind of leaning in and like not only accepting it, but like kind of starting to form an identity around that, and doing so in a good way, and not an identity like you look down on yourself or something's wrong, but you're like, this is something I overcame. This is something that I'm working through, and now you are connecting to a whole group of people who are doing the same thing, and it almost kind of sounds like an overall, like a net positive. To some sense.
And the journey continues, which is awesome. But I got to tell you, it's a very validating letter to hear whenever it's like, hey, somebody wrote in with a really hard question or an interesting one. We took the time to gather resources and make suggestions. And, you hope that folks will bumble into those, right? You hope that folks will explore them. You hope that they'll buy a book, or look into something. But every once in a while, we get a letter like this where somebody says, hey, listen, you guys told me to go to therapy. I went to therapy. I did what you told me to do. Or, hey, you guys gave me a bunch of books and podcasts. I used those to launch me into an entire thing. It has helped. And you know what? I wouldn't have done it had you guys not encouraged me to do it and told me to do it. And man, I got to tell you, doing this show, that's the sweet stuff. For me, Pod Therapy is not about the Lamborghinis that we drive. It's not about, the paparazzi that follow us around. It's not about being invited to all the big swinging, happening things in town, for being the biggest preeminent podcasting therapist.
I saw your outfit at the Met Gala. That was
Did you
great.
like it? Yeah, Tax the Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody else was doing something similar, but, mine didn't get as many photographs, but I was wearing it too.
You wore it better.
Thank you. But, this is what we do it for. It's letters like that,
Certainly
finding out it
filled
was
it out.
helpful. Yeah. Thank you, Sally Boop Scoop. Oh, great letters. All right. End of the show. So remember, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and check out extra content. The week that we are recording this, I just posted another lecture on imposter syndrome, and I went through 3 causes and 5 solutions that therapists will identify and help you with, and outlined those. And so that's an hour-long lecture. It's a deep dive into imposter syndrome. There's also another one that was put up this month, a 2-hour-long lecture on narcissistic personality disorder. At patreon.com/therapy, you can find fun things like our fun movie night hangouts, a lot of additional content that we do, and of course, every episode of our show has an entire additional hour that comes before it, where we talk over whatever's going on. Sometimes it's silly. Today was a very cool deep dive into physical fitness, training, and how initially it's really a struggle to get in there and do the right thing. And we went through a bunch of different things that are just true from our own lives of how we've overcome that, and went over some awesome tips and suggestions. Everything from how you actually get up in the morning and go attack this to actually doing things the right way and feeling good about it. So patreon.com/therapy always has additional content for you, and it's a fun place to hang out and comment and discuss things with the community. And we really appreciate all of our supporters. Remember, if you've become a TheraPal, TheraPod, TheraDactyl, or TheraProducer, always go to our Twitter account, at PodTherapyGuys on Twitter, where we will immediately celebrate you. That same day, we will thank you for joining our team at any giving level. Once a month, we will always thank our Therapods and Theradactyls at the beginning of the month, and we thank our Therapals and Therapods and Theradactyls and Theraproducers the next episode after you have subscribed. So we're recording this one back in September 17th, so if you've subscribed since then, listen to a future episode where we will definitely acknowledge that. But we want to start by thanking our bosses, the Saccharin 16, the mysterious and shrouded Illuminati members of our fan club, the Theraproducers. Thank you, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider, Robert Brownie Jr. Mint, Kayla Lansbury, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop. Did you see what Nathan posted on Twitter today?
I don't think so.
He put this on Twitter. I'm reading it. He said, for people who wonder why we pay for Pod Therapy, why we pay for the show. Well, this week it's because we got to hear Jim sincerely and passionately scream, "I don't care about the kids." I love his support. Thank you, Nathan. Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, King of Student Loan Debt, Dr. Ben Don, Crazy Banana Scoop, Mason Miller, Scott Jameson, oh, I lost my place, Carolyn Albert, Leon Kassab, Kevin Chamberlain, Malaya, Richard Macy, Cindy Ash, Newstick, and first of name, breather of fire, dumb of ass, Lord Colin Stewart.
And if you'd like to hear this episode uncut and unedited,
You're out of your mind.
and enjoy our spontaneous side projects, go to patreon.com/therapy. And thank you for supporting mental health.
That's all the time that we've got for this week's session. We want to thank our landlords for staying up late with us, Matt Mattingly's Ice Cream Social Podcast. And thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Share this episode with someone who needs it by opening the episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link we provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? Ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Hans.
Franz.
Thanks. We'll see you for your appointment next week.
I was going to say concentric isometric thing.
That would have worked too.
That was close. Damn.
While doing your lecture on imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
did you do a little tick mark to yourself every time you felt imposter
Yeah,
syndrome. While
That's
doing
what I
it.
should have been doing. Yeah, that was the great inception irony of me doing narcissistic personality disorder, which was not lost.